going on, world? Welcome to We on the Last with Tyson Paul, the show where we sit here and interview some of your favorite comics and ask them everything comedy. I'm Tyson Paul, your regular host, and today we have a very special guest. She is originally from Boston, but has made her way to the Miami area. You can catch her on her new hot podcast right now, Two Girls and One Blunt, but she's been a comic for 2 years, doing her thing up and down all of America. Let's give it up for Jaime Lee. Hey, Jaime.
Hello. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Oh, hanging.
just hanging, just doing the thing, man. All right, so normally how we get this started, we like to ask our friends that are comics, we always like to ask them, what is the first memories of comedy that you have? Like, of just comedy as a genre? Just, what are your...
As a job?
Memories? Yes.
Okay. I actually have a great first, how I got into comedy. It was very unexpected. I worked in a sales job in New Hampshire. I didn't have any friends, so I just moved there. And one of the guys who was my age was like, well, why don't you come to an open mic? Like, I do stand-up comedy. So I went, and I just went to, watch. And that was my first time really watching, live comedy. I've never really seen it live. So I was like, wow, this is really cool. I would love to make people laugh like that. And I started, thinking about it over the next, 8 months. And I wanted to, I was starting to, really be okay, I think I'm gonna do it. It's a scary thing to get on stage for the first time if you've never done anything like that, and I was not a public speaker or anything. So I asked one of my friends, I was like, hey, do you want to go to the open mic on Thursday? I just want to see what the vibe is, so I know kind of where to start writing jokes and stuff. And we went, and we were watching, we're laughing, we're the only girls in a whole room of 35 dudes. And so one of the guys on stage was like, why the fuck are you two here? Am I allowed to swear, by the way?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And he's like, why are you guys here? What's going on? And then my friend just blurts out, she wants to try stand-up comedy. And I'm like, oh, fuck. And he's like, oh, you want to try stand-up? You have 5 minutes. Get on right now. And I was like, no. I've never even wrote a joke before. I don't know what I would do. And they're like, no, get up. And everyone's like, get up. And I had a couple beers in me. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. What's the worst thing that could happen? And so I got up and I told a story about a bad date. I was the red flag on a Tinder date and all the things that went wrong on it. And I got some laughs. And from there I was like, that is a drug and I need more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to it.
Yeah, no, that's always the funniest thing about stand-up comedy, because a lot of people that are in stand-up comedy never wanted to public speak, never wanted to do anything where they had to talk in front of people, let alone even if it's just one person, they never wanted to do it. But it's funny how, especially with female comics, they always have the most awkward stories on how they got their start in comedy, and it's just funny because if you didn't have any beers in you, do you think you would have went up?
Probably not. No. I mean, maybe I was in a period of my life where I wanted to try new things and get out of my comfort zone. I'm constantly trying to push myself to get out of my comfort zone. So I'm known for throwing myself into wild situations. And I had just started sales that year, and I was starting to learn how to think on my feet, which is a skill I did not have. If I did a presentation and I didn't know word for word what I was going to say, that fucked up the rest of the presentation and I was just done. It was bad. I was not good. So the sales, I was like, wait, I'm starting to learn how to think off the top of my head. And I was like, I kind of want to try this. It was becoming this sales is kind of like comedy where you have a lot of ups and downs and you get addicted to that. And so I was like, you know what? It's the same thing. I'm just talking to someone and I'm on a demo. So I remember walking on stage and being like, you are the fucking man. You got this. You know more about this than they do. You just be you. And I was just hyping myself up. I didn't do amazing. Obviously, it was shit. But it was enough to keep going for sure.
She's like, I'm not gonna say it was the greatest superstardom night, but it was enough. And so after that first laugh, what went through your head after that very first laugh?
I don't know. So I had the same personality, and I'm very open. I'm pretty much the same person in person as I am online since I was a kid. I was always like vulgar and crazy. Like my family life was crazy, so I like swore and saw a lot of shit. And everyone in high school and like middle school would be like, "You're not funny. Like, what are you doing?" You know what I mean? I was always like stop, like that kind of humor. It was like too much for them. Like, we're in public. I don't know. So, because I just say whatever the fuck's on my mind. So to actually like be on stage and I'm like, holy fuck, I'm up here to make people laugh. Mm-hmm. And like you hear that, I was like, maybe I do have this in me. And so it did like give me the confidence to keep going and be like, you know what, these people are wrong. I could be funny.
Mm-hmm. Now, actually, your story is like kind of not really as normal as everybody else's, where we like most comedians where they just grew up like watching like comedy from a young age or anything. Yours was basically just first like day on the job, hands on type of deal. So after that first night you did stand up. When was the next time you did stand up, and then how'd you go about like perfecting your craft?
So I that took that week, and I spent every waking minute doing it, like learning everything that I could, how to write a joke, like how to set up a joke. I started watching people. I was like, I want to do this. And so I went to the next mic the following week, and I did a 5-minute set, and I wrote like all the jokes from scratch. And I listened to this podcast called Let's Talk About Sets on like Apple Podcasts and stuff. And that like really helped me. So they told me about like, you know, coming back to the original joke. And so I included that. I made sure how I ended went right back to my first joke, and then doing like my B jokes first, my B jokes first, my C jokes in the middle, and like follow out with what I thought was the best. And then I was in a sales office, so I was like the team lead, so I just like took everyone on my team. I was like, we're in this room for 10 minutes, and I was like, I'm doing my stand-up set in front of you guys, and you tell me what you think. And they were like, are you kidding me? And you know, I'm a walking HR violation. Like, I could have gotten fired for this, but like one of my jokes was like about sucking dick, and I got on my knees and I acted out the joke, and my boss walked in on that exact moment, but I was like, let's do it. So yeah, also the Walls comedy, and I went in, and everyone like they picked up on how I like set up my jokes and like took the time to like learn the science behind writing, I guess. And people were like, wow, that was good for your first time. Like, they were impressed, and that made me want to come back again. And I just like kept doing that.
Oh my God, I can only imagine what your boss's face looked like when he walks in and sees you on the ground, like basically like you're shooting the invisible porno in front of everybody.
And he goes, wow. He was like, what are you doing? I was like, I have to do stand-up comedy, and I just wanted to practice my set. And he's like, fuck. He was like a G, so like he literally was so cool, and he's like, don't let the fucking HR lady see you, like hurry up. Like, you
should have been like, are you sure you're still talking about comedy, or you just like are you trying to give me another career path?
Yeah, it doesn't help that like all the people on my team were guys too, so I was just like, boys, line up, we're gonna do this.
She said, "Line them up, like line them up." Oh my God! Well, well, being from the Boston area and basically getting your start in comedy in that area is actually pretty like legendary, because it's so many legendary comics that came out of that era, like, or that area where it's like your Bill Burrs, your Dan Cooks, Joe Rogan, and everybody. So like, when you were started, they were already like pretty big. But I know like in comedy, like no matter how big you are, you still go back to your old stomping ground. So like, what was it like seeing some of the biggest names in comedy like come to like your open mics, or like to be around you, just basically like talking to you like they're not famous?
Yeah. So I actually got started in New Hampshire, but I did that for like 8 months, and then right when COVID happened is when I moved to Boston. Oh. So I've done a bunch of shows and like mics in Boston, but like I was based out of New Hampshire. For me, just even seeing the people that were like the ones who are always headlining and how good they are, and they were pretty like open, like talking to me when I was there. Like, people were pretty friendly. It was inspiring, because I'm like, oh my God. And then you hear about the greats and everything. And it was awesome because right before COVID, I had been practicing and like going to open mics and everything. I got booked to open up for Lenny Clark in Boston. And that was like the biggest opportunity ever that I would have, you know? And so that was really cool. And then it got canceled. We love the pandemic. But just realize like, oh shit, I could actually do this. Because I constantly go through like imposter syndrome, I guess. I don't know why. I feel like I don't fit the average, like how I got into comedy. And some people have like such a love for comedy. And then I'm like, because I just enjoy it and I don't have the same like background as they do. So like, I don't know.
Well, sometimes that's actually a good thing because like if you grew up in comedy, like you're kind of, sometimes you get like stuck in a box, like you get stuck in a certain way, like, oh, this is how comedy's supposed to go and this is the end all be all, this is it. Like you don't go no other way, you just go this way. Like, but it's actually kind of fascinating for comics like you that started out like between like 2019 and like now, where it's a different time. It's a different time than ever before because of the pandemic. So as a new comic, like what was it like basically like when the pandemic happened for you, and like when did you realize like, okay, this is actually kind of serious, like, and it's affecting my career?
Well, so before I did stand up, I started doing these videos on YouTube called like Down in My DMs, and I would like do crazy shit. They'd all be themed, or I'd get drunk and like hit up dudes on Tinder and like go through it. So they were just like funny videos. So that's kind of how I also, I guess, got into comedy a little bit more, or stand up. It kind of just worked with what I was already doing. And so when the pandemic hit, I also was doing TikTok and trying to like just do funny things on social media everywhere else. And so when the pandemic happened, I just kept that going. I stayed consistent with that. And so people, when comedy reopened, people noticed that I was staying consistent and like, or hearing my name or whatever. I was meeting new people from social media because like, I'm just going to DM everyone and connect with people and like add everyone. So I honestly thought it was going to be helpful because I could fully focus on like social media, which I think for most comics, they were like, a lot of people don't focus on the video content, like, and see how important that is to like the stand-up world, especially if you've been in it and it's been done a certain way for so long, and like social media is just getting so important in stand-up comedy and like getting your name out there. That I think that affected a lot of other people because they were like, we have to completely pivot what we're doing. For me, that was when I started OnlyFans. So financially, like my career, my money wasn't based on like comedy. So like I couldn't imagine how that would affect people's careers. Like that's so difficult. But I was like, I'm very grateful that I had like a financial avenue that allowed me to still pursue it like online.
Yeah. And then it's actually like, that's a big debate right now in comedy. Basically like with new school versus old school, like because of social media now and how popular like people are like getting on social media, basically with social media comedy and stuff. But like older comedians that like are like kind of against like social media, like they feel like, oh, like these younger comics are cheating the game. But like even during the pandemic, when we couldn't go to comedy clubs or anything like that and perform on a nightly basis, it seemed like the newer comics were winning because not only were they making money off of like basically doing what they normally do on social media, but also then they felt more comfortable when Zoom shows came out, or like people were asking to do like different type of interviews, or you know, they weren't really getting rusty. And then they also were like just round the clock, like just constantly coming up with content and then coming up with new ways to actually receive revenue from comedy. Now, you were talking about your OnlyFans and how you started it, like, but your OnlyFans was a little bit different than everybody else's, like, because everybody normally knows OnlyFans is basically like a glorified porn site. But with you actually made it into where you were still working your comedy into it. So how did you decide on doing that and going that way?
Well, so like my background is in sales and marketing, and so I'm always thinking like everything that I'm doing, like if I'm focusing on one thing, like stand up alone, I'm always thinking of how does that fit into like the bigger picture of everything else I want to accomplish. And so I was like, I have to, if I'm going to do OnlyFans, I don't want to be like just like, I don't want that to be the only route. You know what I mean? I also think personality sells more than sex. So I could, because I showed my personality so much online, I could show less on OnlyFans, but I could give them something because, like, I don't care if you see my titties. But, like, I could give you something and tie it into comedy. So I started doing topless comedy. So I would charge, like, $100. Yeah, it was the first time I was doing anything. I was charging a shit ton of money for everything because it was the first time. So I knew that was the best way to do that. But I was charging $100 for, like, 5-minute sets of me topless doing comedy. And I would also, like, add my videos, or if I had, like, if things were getting removed from social media, I would add that. And then I did, like, typical, like, girlfriend stuff. So, like, stuff around the house, like, cute, like, lingerie pics or, like, whatever. But that's kind of how I started. So it was, like, a mix of comedy and personality.
And then do you plan on now, like, basically just focusing moving forward, like, as, like, starting your own, like, YouTube channel, like, with, like, different, like, skits and sketches with other popular comics? Because I mean, I also know in, like, some of your videos, you were in other videos for other social media influencers, like Tonio Skits and a bunch of others, where you guys, like, actually came together and just were doing videos and, like, making those popular too. So do you plan on also doing that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like, everything's been so fast moving, and you're right, like you said before, like, the younger people, they just never got rusty and we're constantly pushing out content. So there's always, like, that pressure. But I just networked with other people so that I could do those things. In Boston and New Hampshire, there was no photographers and videographers. It was really hard to find somebody, especially, like, a good one that, like, would fit my style, what I was looking for. I would ask people to do skits with me, and I couldn't get anyone to, like, be consistent and want to join with me. So that's kind of why I made the decision to move to Miami. It was like, I'd be surrounded by creators who want to do this with me, and we can grow together. So that is my goal. I've been doing, like, trending stuff on TikTok. That's, like, I add my personality and, like, funny bits in that. But I want to switch to, like, comedy sketches is ultimately what I want to do. And now that I'm, like, collabing with other people, I get to see how they're doing it. So it's really cool. That's definitely the plan. Definitely on YouTube. I need a personal assistant to help me with, like, all the marketing. I'm running so many other things with the podcast and, you know, OnlyFans and other things that we're doing. So that's the next step. Yeah.
Have you ever thought, because with your comedy, it's kind of, like, raw and raunchy, and then, like, it seems like you always have no filter. Have you ever had a point where you felt like even you were going too far?
No. I did, like, well, I mean, not that I thought I was going too far, but I know other people have. Like, I've obviously told jokes that were, like, I think are hilarious, and the people who are around me with fucked up dark humor also think it's funny. But then some people, that's not their type of humor at all. So if they're not there to see that type of humor, they're like, what the fuck? So, like, I did the dick sucking joke in front of a bunch of old ladies once. And, like, they were judging me, so I was on my knees and I pointed at it and I was like, don't fucking judge me. I know you've been here before too. And I was, like, trying to, like, build up on it. But, you know, you win some, you lose some. But my goal is to just focus on what I want to do. And so I'm not changing me and what feels natural to me. Like, being crazy and, like, raunchy is very natural. And I know one day that will pay off if I just stick to it. And, you know, some people might not like that, but as I grow and get bigger, my audience will like that, and then those people will be able to fill seats, stuff like that. So that's kind of that.
And then you always got to take the good with the bad. So when comedy returned and you actually started, like, getting on stage, like, on a regular basis, like, did you ever have a moment where you bombed, and, like, how did you feel after that?
Bombing is, like, the worst feeling ever. Sometimes, like, I'll bomb and I like when I, like, do, like, little tags that, like, work, and then I can add that, so I feel accomplished. If I can get just, like, one thing that I did to, like, think on my feet and it works and I can add that to a joke, then I feel accomplished. But I was doing, like, a comedy festival or whatever. I passed to the second round And then the second time, I just had a bunch of stuff happen in my life, like, and I was not in a mental space, and that comes out in like my delivery. I couldn't turn it off, and it was just not, I didn't make it to the next round, and I just felt like, damn, because there's people who like can push through that and get on stage and fucking crush it, and that's where like experience and skill comes from. But so it's like obvious I'm on the newer side, but I think I look at it as like an opportunity to look for growth. Like, how could I have read the crowd better, or like switch my jokes up, or what could I have added? And so I just like will go through that after the set and fixate on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And have you well, it's kind of funny that like with you being in comedy for only less than like 3 years, and you already have multiple women like looking up to you and being like, okay, like, you kind of like are one of the reasons why it's okay for me to do my comedy. Like, how does that feel?
It feels good. Like, on the days that I have the imposter syndrome where I'm like you go through like the negative self-talk, or like, am I meant for this, or like people who say things like that gets to you sometimes. And so when you get someone who like DMs you, like I literally just got a DM last week of a girl who like heard our podcast, watched my comedy, and was like, you make me feel more comfortable and safe, like being able to have no filter and being me, and it makes me want to start some sort of avenue in comedy. That feels really good, because then I'm like, that's why it was worth it, the tough times and like sticking through and staying consistent. So it feels great.
Yeah. Where would you say is your favorite area to perform comedy? Because you've traveled all over. You traveled and done shows like basically in Miami area, Los Angeles and California area, and then also in the East Coast. Like, where do you feel like is the best type of comedy, and where is your favorite area?
Boston, I had my it's kind of cliquey, but I also, when I did like Topless Comedy, I ended up doing a Topless Comedy show that like kind of went viral in all the comedy groups, and it was very controversial because I raised all the money for Black Lives Matter charities. I had a bunch of comics on it, and so I felt really uncomfortable going back into Boston comedy because, especially after COVID, it was so long, and I ended up doing it, but I stayed like in the Worcester area. I did some things like in Boston, but it wasn't much because of that. So because I just felt very uncomfortable. I did Nick's Comedy Stop, and that was awesome. I liked that venue in Boston. When I went to LA, it was a whole new level. It was the step, like I felt like when I was going to the open mics in LA, like some of the big ones, like the Hollywood Improv, I felt like I was at a show in Boston, because like sometimes the mics aren't like that, and I'm like, the people here, like they're like on a different level. You know what I mean? I can't imagine being around such great people all the time, getting opportunities to be around and be on shows with like great comics, that you would have that like experience level. You know what I mean? It like just levels you up faster because you're learning constantly in that environment. So being in LA and being on like a big show at the Haha was like a whole different feeling. I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And so I was very I'm in love with the LA comedy scene. Miami is a lot of like Spanish people, a lot of Spanish speaking people. So I don't speak Spanish, and I notice that all the comedy here, they're really like, tugging at your heartstrings with like your roots, and like, oh, I have a Cuban mom, and this is what Cuban moms are like, and everyone in the in the audience gets it. So it's definitely different, because I haven't heard a lot of comedy that's like mine yet. So I'm like kind of nervous. I have my first show actually on Monday. So, and then I was asked to do like an open at the Miami Improv and the Dania Improv. So I'm nervous actually for Miami, but I'm excited because that comedy scene was so welcoming as well. I definitely think LA and Miami were way more welcoming than Boston. Boston, everyone up there is assholes. Like, that's just who we are.
Yeah, basically. But yeah. Have you thought about taking the Topless show to Miami?
I don't know. There was like, I don't know. It was we raised over $4,000 on our first show, and I sold 120 tickets, and so it was packed. It was like I got really great feedback on it. It was awesome to give to charities. It's definitely something I think like with the charity route too, like because it's like, but that's where the complications came. It was like sexualizing a charity or like whatever, like the movement and all that stuff, and so that was something I took into consideration too. And so I haven't really decided whether or not like it's something I want to do again in that regard, you know? So there's a lot of moving pieces, and I have a lot of other things going on, so I'm trying to figure out how to fit that into the mix.
Okay. Well, I guess I want to talk about this one project that you have going on right now that's actually pretty popular. You have a really popular podcast right now with your friend Emily called Two Girls and One Blunt. Like, how did you guys, well, I kind of have a feeling on how you guys came up with this idea, but how did you guys come up with, like, basically the concept of the show, and basically, did you think it was going to be as successful as it is right now?
Whenever I start something, I'm always starting it with the idea, and I, like, say a lot of affirmations and very spiritual, like, that it's going to happen. Like, I just put that into, like, what I do. So, like, I started the podcast not just for fun. I went in it like, I'm making this a business. I want this to be a thing. I want to be a podcaster. Like, I had this vision. So it was like social media, logos, like everything all at once. And like, how do I network for that? So that's kind of how I got started with that. But the idea with the name is we're roommates when we bonded over like getting high, and we were in quarantine. We were smoking like 4 ounces a month. Like, we were smoking a lot of each. Hold on, that's each a month. And so, yeah. And I was just getting high, and I was like, yo, I think we should start a podcast. Because I already had a podcast that I just kind of let die. I wasn't feeling like passionate about it, and I wanted a co-host. And I don't know how Two Girls, One Cup came up, but I was like, yo, the podcast name, Two Girls, One Blunt. That's what we're doing. And everyone's like, really, you think? And I'm like, every single person will know what that is associated with. They'll laugh. Therefore, the podcast name already gave them an emotion, which is like marketing. And so I was like, also, it's crazy enough where people will be like, what is that? Who are they? What are they talking about? Like, I was just trying to think of like what would be a catchy title. And I don't know. And it also fits like my brand with the whole like being wild and crazy. Because it's definitely off of Two Girls, One Cup.
Well, I've listened to a few episodes, and I think both of you, you and Emily, are both wild and crazy. And then like you guys have guests that are just as crazy as you guys. Like, so it's kind of like weird, like how you find people just as crazy as you two. And one, is Emily ever thinking about doing stand-up comedy? And like, how did you guys like just gel? Like, cause have you guys known each other for a long time, or like were you guys just like spontaneously just like, okay, we're gonna be like best friends?
Yeah, I was living in New Hampshire, moved in with an ex-boyfriend, or with a boyfriend at the time, and like a week into us moving in together, he was like, nah, can't do this. And I was like, bet. Packed my shit, and within 4 days, I was like, I'm moving to Boston. So I went on Facebook Marketplace, and I was like, I need rooms. Who's available right now? I found the cheapest place. There was girl roommates. I messaged her, and she was like, do you want to see the place? And I'm like, nah. And I'm like, maybe we can bond over like wine or a blunt. And she was like, oh, I don't drink wine, but I'll gladly smoke a blunt with you. And I was like, fuck yes. And so I moved in. Like, I didn't even meet her. We just like had one conversation, and then we just smoked every day and bonded while we smoked. And we were stuck inside. There was no living room in our apartment. My room was like a living room bedroom, so we always hung out in my rooms. We were always together because there's nothing to do. And we just bonded over that. And I think like her watching me, I didn't have like my following and like presence has grown so much in the past year. And like I still can't believe I'm at where I'm at. And where the podcast is at and everything like that. So she watched me go through like trials and tribulations and the ups and downs and like things getting deleted and almost getting my accounts deleted and like the basically getting canceled in Boston comedy for my Dallas comedy show and like all this stuff. And I asked her along the way, I was making good money on OnlyFans. I was like, do this with me. Like, let's do it together. Like, I want to bring my friends up. I want to have friends that are around me that like love doing it. And we're all growing together, making money and having fun and laughing. And like, finally she like made the decision, started an OnlyFans, we got the podcast started, and we just went for it. And she's right here along with me doing like everything I'm doing, and it's amazing to have her. So we were random, and we just fucking hit it off, and it's all because of pot, which I love.
Nice. Now, y'all, I mean, you've like throughout this whole interview, you've talked about how basically like you've been basically canceled and like blackballed from like different places, and basically just in your comedy is like somewhat controversial, like, but isn't that like the history of female like comedians? Like they all like basically were misunderstood, like controversial, like basically trailblazers on their own right. Like how does the current crop of female comics accept you right now throughout your career? And then also like if you had to like basically study like one female comic, like this is the career I kind of want to have, like who would it be?
Nikki Glaser. But I think it was just the Boston canceling thing. It was very controversial. Like it had over 400 comments in it, like people being like, fuck you. You just have to show your tits to be funny. You're not fucking funny. Like it got mean. And so it was very awkward and weird. And there was people who didn't want to pick sides. Like they didn't want to stand up for me, who were my friends and all this stuff. And so Boston was like that for a while. And then I just had to say, fuck it, and started showing up. And then as I was growing on social media, so many people came out and they were like, actually, we heard of you. We've known you because of that incident. And we didn't say anything, but we thought it was kind of cool what you did, and we thought you'd like raise money for like, and you did a good thing. So people started coming out after, and so I was more accepted and everything like that. So now that going through that up and down and whatever, and seeing kind of that, it's like, yeah, of course people are going to say bad things about you, and there's going to be people who hate you or hate what you're saying, and they don't support you or think you're funny, and that's fine, as long as like you're just adhering to your, you know, your audience and who does like you. And I just try to focus on that. I think, like, even in the past year, especially the women that came out of 2020 are a fucking different breed. So, like, I think people are being way more lenient with how women are kind of expressing themselves now and how they're very open with their sexuality. So I'm very hopeful that it's becoming easier for women. I can't imagine what it was like for, like, I remember when, like, Amy Schumer, like, when her comedy special went on Netflix, everyone had something to say about it. And I remember seeing like clips here and there, but I'm like, oh, she's funny, and like that's kind of my humor, just like talking about sucking dick or whatever. So I think now it's more accepting, and I feel like everywhere I've been, the comedians that I've met have been so awesome and open and accepting, and it's made me feel very comfortable like being in comedy now. I definitely hear stuff from like white males who, like, I don't know, they're like, oh, it's because you're hot and you show your tits online, so they want to laugh. And I'll let them think whatever they want to think and just focus on the good things. But
that's pretty much all white people do.
Yeah.
Like, they're in control of thinking, so like it gets weird.
White people.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, you said it, not me, but like, I mean, like your tits raise money for me, but that's a different thing.
Yeah, Nikki Glaser though is definitely who I look up to because I don't know, she's done like roast battles, she has a podcast, she's on Fuckboy, like she's on reality TV, she's doing the Just for Laughs thing, she's everywhere, and I think she's funny, I think she like is just who she is, you know what I mean? Like I've listened to her podcast, it lines up with how she is in her stand-up, and I like that. It's like very authentic, and she shares her vulnerability online as well a lot, and I really, you know, appreciate it in a world of like everyone trying to be perfect and everything. So I look up to her because I'm like, I just want to be everywhere, and I want to be be able to do everything. I don't want to have to stick to just one thing. I like love everything, and so she shows me that like I could be successful at doing that, and there's women doing it, so I like that.
Okay. And right before we end this interview, we like to do a game that we normally like to call Either Or basically we just ask some of our favorite comics like what they prefer. We'll give them two topics and they have to choose either or. Now, these are your preferences. Like, we don't need you to give us a political answer or anything like that, or just an answer just to make everybody happy, but these are just your preferences, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so number one. Okay, Hollywood Improv or the Comedy Cellar.
I've never been to the Comedy Cellar, but I. So yeah, I don't know. These. I think I've seen more comedy online though from the Comedy Cellar, so I guess I'll choose that because that's what I'm more familiar with.
Okay, so either was it the Hollywood Improv or the Comedy Cellar?
The Comedy Cellar.
Okay.
Am I just supposed to word answer because that's kind of hard? I'm a talker.
It's no problem, no problem. All right, next one. Okay, topless comedy show or bottomless comedy show?
Is it men and women?
I get either or. Like, okay, like I guess we can do a man and woman topless comedy show and a man and women bottomless comedy show.
Bottomless.
Okay. OnlyFans or just for laughs?
OnlyFans.
Okay, last one, last and not least. Okay, Jamie Lee or Nikki Glazer?
Jamie Lee.
Always bet on yourself. All right. That was a great interview. I want to thank Jamie Lee for having the time to come out and share some laughs and share some thoughts with us. She's a true trailblazer, so I can't wait to see your career blossom even more. Can't wait to see all the things you have coming up ahead. Thank you, Jamie, for coming out. I want to thank all the guys and women, just basically comedy fans, for watching this. My name is Tyson Paul. This was Jamie Lee. If you want to follow her on Instagram, she's at Jamie Lee Comedy and everything. You can see a lot of great jokes, a lot of great pictures. Also follow her podcast, Two Girls and One Blunt, with her friend Emily. And it's usually every Tuesday on Spotify. So my name is Tyson Paul. And always remember to laugh at life because it's actually pretty funny. All right, see you guys later.